Well, good morning, everyone. The world knows who Prime Minister Ardern is. Not only is she an amazing person as a world leader, she's teaching us how to govern with empathy and with strength. She's a champion for people who too often have the odds stacked against them. Prime Minister Ardern is a champion of women. She's the second elected leader ever to give birth while in office. And she's the first ever to take maternity leave while in office. She's taken that experience and used it to advocate for expanding the rights of women in New Zealand. She's released an international human rights plan in which New Zealand promises to take the lead on, among other things, gender equality and women and girls empowerment. The Prime Minister is a champion for inclusion and for belonging. She's worked with New Zealand's Indigenous Maori people toward better jobs and better wages, and she's striving to move the Maori language to the heart of New Zealand's day-to-day conversations. She articulates, as few others do, the importance of the climate crisis for the future, and she's challenged inaction that she sees by the large states in the Pacific region. She's pledged to have child poverty in the next decade, and after the horrific massacre at Christchurch earlier this year, she guided her nation through its dark hour, and us as a world at showing what leadership looks like with moral clarity. She's done all of this after only being in office for 2 years, so I'm excited to welcome here a true international leader who understands the future of the world depends on eliminating inequality. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Kia ora koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou, and thank you so much for the warmth of your welcome today. If it's not entirely obvious to all of you, I was born in the 1980s, the decade of big hair, big shoulders, and very big reforms. A decade where New Zealand went through a period of rapid privatisation and rapid economic liberalisation. While many have argued that aspects of these reforms were needed to open our economy to the world, the pace of change undeniably came with a high price. Jobs were lost, manufacturing moved offshore, regulations were removed, and the gap between rich and poor quickly expanded. Then came the 1990s, and New Zealand introduced further reforms that brought user pay to the fore and welfare cuts for the most vulnerable. Now, I was young when all of this was still happening, but I do still remember it. I was the daughter of a policeman in a town of just 3,000 people, and I only had to look around me to see people being left behind. Now, if it's possible to begin building your social conscience when you are just a small child, then that is what happened to me. Now, I never viewed the world through the lens of politics, not then, and in many ways I still don't now. Instead, I try to view it through the lens of children and people, and through the most basic concept and idea of fairness. When I eventually signed up to a political party when I was 17 years old, I wasn't particularly looking for a career. I wanted, perhaps naively, to change the world. I was promptly handed 300 leaflets and told to start changing the world one letterbox at a time. The world has changed immeasurably since then, though. We are both more connected, and yet we are more partisan and more tribal than ever. Inequality has progressed almost as rapidly as development. Now, but thankfully, there are some values that endure. In Aotearoa, New Zealand, we have always tried to look out for each other and tried to do right by one another. Our track record of striving for equality and our values of compassion and fairness are often sources of national pride, but that hasn't always translated into the progress and the gains that we need. But you know, when it comes to a set of rules for a country to live by, you would struggle to do better than the SDGs. You know, any serious politician would be hard-pressed to argue with goals like halving poverty or providing decent work or quality education and clean water and peace and justice for all. And yet here we are, still struggling. Now perhaps it's time to acknowledge that it's not the aspiration that is the problem, but the domestic political environments in which we are trying to embed them. Now let me try and explain what I mean by that. As in many countries, our success in New Zealand has traditionally been measured in purely economic terms. And on these terms, New Zealand has been relatively successful, with rates of growth that international commentators have remarked upon and widely commended. However, the deficiency of such measures has become really clear. The reforms of the 80s and 90s that I referenced just before, they have left an enduring mark on our society. While many people in New Zealand enjoy an enviable quality of life, our social statistics, they tell another story for too many. Unacceptable rates of child poverty, a growing homelessness problem, heartbreaking rates of suicide, and distressingly high family violence. Now, these problems, they are an affront to our national values, and yet they are lived experience for far too many people in our country. Economic growth accompanied by worsening social outcomes is not success. It is failure. And turning things around requires changing both the way we think and the way we act and the way we measure success. So to tackle these issues in New Zealand, the government I'm proud to lead is doing something not many other countries have tried. We've incorporated the principles of the 2030 Agenda into our domestic policy making in a way that we hope will drive system-level actions. And this is not just a new scorecard. It is about fundamentally changing how we make decisions and therefore how we allocate resources. For instance, when deciding where to spend public money and manage our national assets, we've decided it's no longer enough to ask what will drive economic growth. Now the question that we as politicians are asking is, what will do the most to improve both the lives of New Zealanders now, but also in the future? Now, to help us answer that question, in New Zealand we've been having our Treasury developing what's called a living standards framework that measures well-being, it measures risk, it measures resilience across economic, social and environmental domains. It puts sustainable intergenerational well-being at the heart of our decision-making, not just economic growth. Now this year we delivered our first well-being budget in May. Oh, thank you. I didn't expect you to notice. It took an evidence-based approach and it focused investments in areas like child poverty reduction, helping homeless people off the streets into supported living, sexual and family violence services, and delivering on the aspirations of Māori, our Indigenous people. The centrepiece of the wellbeing budget was the largest ever investment in mental health services New Zealand has ever seen. And this has included the development of a new frontline service where people can get support for mental health needs at their doctor in the same way that they would for a physical ailment. Now, we're investing in mental health because ignoring it is a stain on our society and a drain on our economy. Now, our investment will help people ultimately, we believe, live more fulfilling lives. And a byproduct of that, of course, is that it will increase productivity. That is what real, genuine well-being looks like. It's a values-driven approach to economic success. But it's not just through new policies and programs where we can embed these principles of well-being. For instance, trade is fundamental to New Zealand's economic prosperity. We are a small trading nation, always have been. Well, we are bringing inclusive and sustainability principles to our trade agenda, including by pursuing environmental outcomes in our trade agreements, such as an end to subsidies that encourage illegal fishing. And we strongly advocate for respecting and advancing global rules in the WTO to ensure trade is conducted fairly, rather than on the basis of power, which risks leaving behind both small and developing countries alike. Now, globally, there has been some impressive progress in some SDG areas, such as reductions in extreme poverty and infant mortality, along with respectable progress in discrete areas, such as increased access to electricity. Now, I know we all applaud these advances and the effort taken to achieve them, but in many areas, progress has stalled. Despite global economic growth, the distribution of benefits remains uneven. There has been little change in income inequality, and in some areas, we are going backwards with rising global hunger, rising global greenhouse gas emissions, alarming pressure on natural resources and in the environment. I believe that the change in approach that we have tried and worked hard to adopt in New Zealand, we should perhaps try and work hard to adopt globally. It's about acceleration, but it's also about transformation, how to improve people's well-being and achieve a productive economy at the same time in a way that enhances rather than diminishes our environment and leaves no one behind. Now, internationally, we've had to strengthen the enablers of sustainable development, and we take a values-driven approach. This means prioritizing things like human rights, effective governance and democracy, gender equality, women's empowerment, and the sound stewardship of the environment. We also look for practical ways to get closer to our shared goals, and I want to give you an example. And that is our work alongside others to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies and other environmentally harmful subsidies is just one more example. There is no point in subsidizing the climate change that we seek to avert. But ultimately, we need more collaboration, more examples of the international community prioritizing our collective global well-being over domestic self-interest. Now, we will never pretend in New Zealand that we have all the answers, and there is no guarantee that our approach will succeed. But I absolutely believe that new thinking is required. We are lucky in that we have resources enough to support people in need, but we have also the pragmatism and empathy that is required too. And I hope that we can share what we are doing whilst at the same time learning from others. So perhaps the urge to change the world that led me to sign up and drop leaflets in 300 mailboxes some 20 years ago wasn't so naive after all. There is strength in collective action and shared responsibility. We just need more of it. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.